Well, hi, folks. Happy Pride. I'm Reverend Dina Dudley, and I am proud to be here. And in no particular order, I am proud to be the assistant pastor here at Metropolitan Community Church of Toronto. I'm proud to be at Pride, however we've had to pull it off this year. Proud to be a gender nonconforming woman. My mother tried to put me in a frilly dress once. It did not go well. I'm proud to be a lesbian. Proud to be married to the woman of my dreams, Janet. Proud to be a woman of faith, and proud to be an American who chooses to live in Canada, where I can do and be all of those things in freedom and safety. I am painfully aware that Pride this year is not what it usually is. I'm here in our sanctuary at MCC Toronto instead of down on Church Street or in Ryerson Theatre, and as an aside, it is just as hot in here today as it would be on Church Street Sunday morning, so don't think I'm missing out on that. But one of the things that Pride was going to be this year was a bit of an homage to women and girls. The theme that Pride Toronto had decided on at one point was girl power, a celebration of all things female, and sadly that kind of got lost in all the pivoting. So since I'm preaching today, I decided, we all decided at MCC, that we would kind of stick with that theme. And so this is a celebration of all women, all girls, all things female and feminine. And in case the rest of you are feeling a wee bit left out at that, please hang in there for the next 10 minutes or so, because you'll see that this is for everyone. Trust me. Did you know that MCC Toronto has been doing Church on Church at Pride for 28 years in a row? Rain or shine. But this is the first time a woman has been the preacher. So I am hugely honored, but I'm also, maybe a wee bit disappointed that it took so long. The church, not MCC Toronto, I mean the Church Universal, the capital C Church, has a lot to answer for when it comes to women. As Jeff said in his intro, toxic masculinity and misogyny, the hatred of women, affects all of us, men and women alike. Gay, straight, or non-binary, cis or trans, it harms all of us. And sadly, the church has been complicit in that. For thousands of years, the church has ignored women, made us invisible, denigrated our gifts and callings, silenced our voices. The early church fathers, there were also church mothers, but we don't hear too much about them for some reason. They did all kinds of theological twists and turns and backflips to promote the notion that only men and not women were created in the image of God, as if women were an afterthought. We were called unclean. We were called intellectually inferior. We were called the reason for sin in the world. Remember Eve and the apple? All her fault. All our fault. And part of the problem has been that the only images we humans seem to be able to envision and draw on for thousands of years are gendered images. And I want to give a shout out to my non-binary siblings for disrupting that, because those images have lacked any sort of balance and really any sort of imagination. Perhaps if we really need to think of God in human terms, we might better think of God as non-binary. And yet, for nearly the entire history of the Christian church, pretty much for the last 2,000 years, God has always been called He. Now, I'm not going to insist that the church call God she for the next 2,000 years, but I am going to highlight the ways in which we as women, all across the gender spectrum, we as human beings can celebrate the divine feminine together, and the ways in which doing so lifts us all. I wrote and rewrote this lesson a whole bunch of times. This is actually draft number 5. And I was going to go on at some length about how the Bible is chock full of beautiful feminine images for God, God as a nurturing spirit, God as the feminine personification of wisdom, as Brenda Lee read for us a minute ago, God as the divine mother. And I was going to show you with copious citations to chapter and verse just some of the many, many ways in which God is portrayed as female. I am probably kind of notorious for going on at great length about what the Bible does and does not say, but we just don't have time for that today. So I had to rewrite that part and eventually toss it all together. And I was prepared also to go on at great length about the history of the Christian church and how it's ignored and silenced women, even women who had great spiritual truths and insights to share with the faithful, how the church called us heretics and witches when we tried to make our voices heard. But eventually I rewrote that too and tossed it too, and because I'm guessing most of us, certainly all of us who are female, know this already. And if you didn't know it, ask a woman someday when you've got time to sit and listen for a while. And while all of that would have been really interesting, mostly to me, it's not why I'm here today. Today is Pride. And Pride is many, many wonderful things. And first and foremost, it's a celebration of who we are, a celebration of the freedom that we have to be just exactly who we are, and a celebration of how far we've come. But Pride is also a protest. That first Pride, 51 years ago, was a bit of a riot, started by transgender women. And I pay tribute to Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, women who were sick and tired of being oppressed and persecuted and pushed around. Oh, trust me, the world better watch out for women who are sick and tired of being pushed around. And there's always a need for both celebration and protest, because Pride is a coming together of diverse communities and a push towards self-acceptance and love. So today we celebrate. We celebrate women, all girls, all things female and feminine. There are all kinds of women in this world. You might have noticed. There are young women and old women, tall women, short women, slender women and women of great substance like myself. There are women of all races and colors, black women, white women, indigenous women, Asian women, women of mixed races, women from the north, the south, the east, the west. There are trans women, cis women, non-binary women, gender non-conforming women. They're all women, and in my mind, they are all beautiful. I do love women, but I digress. They're all women and they're all beautiful and they are all endowed in the very image of God. And we are all equally entitled to the basic human rights and dignity that we all deserve, but some of us don't get. And they are all loved by God just the way they are, unconditionally and passionately and eternally. So today, as we celebrate Pride, it's important to recognize our progress and also acknowledge that we still have a lot of work to do in the world and in our own communities. I want to tell you a story about something that happened to me once, and it may have happened to some of you. Pre-COVID, my wife and I spent a fair bit of time south of the border. And on one of these road trips, we found ourselves at a mall in a smallish place in rural Indiana, and we thought we should use the washroom. And when I walked in, there were 3 little teeny boppers fixing their makeup, and they gave me a look. And one of them said in a really snarky tone, "This is a ladies' room, you know." I almost turned around. But my fierce femme wife, who was right behind me, got all up in their faces and said, "What is your point? How old are you? You think you're an expert on what it means to be a woman?" And they left, somewhat expeditiously. Here's the thing. Did that make me feel out of place or unsafe? You bet it did. But did it change who I am and the way I choose to express that? Nope. Did it change my claim to the term woman? No, because I get to decide what being a woman means for me. It is my God-given right to choose how I express my truth and what that means about my gender expression and how I share that with the world. And also, as an aside, it never hurts to have a really fierce femme running interference for you. Maybe some places in our world aren't ready for me yet, but that doesn't change my divine right to be all of who I am, based on my understanding of how God made me. For me, and for MCC Toronto, the work of human rights is part of the reason we exist. It's not something we do one day a year on Pride, it's what we work at day in and day out. So today, on Pride, we celebrate. Pride isn't canceled. Pride isn't just the parade we can't have. Pride's a feeling, a joy, a celebration of our God-given right to be exactly who God made us to be in all of our wonderfully diverse expressions. So today, I celebrate all women. I want to celebrate women and women's accomplishments and contributions. I want to note in a timely sort of way that many of the countries in this world that are making the best progress against the COVID-19 pandemic, places like New Zealand, Germany, Taiwan, Iceland, Finland, Norway, Denmark, are, by an amazing coincidence, led by women. And I also wish to point out that here in Canada, we're reliant on women's excellent leadership in this public health crisis, from Canada's Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Theresa Tam, to the 7 provincial chief medical officers who are women. I know this because my wife has a t-shirt with all their names on it, and she wears it proudly. And Pride is a celebration of our accomplishments and our freedom. And as women, we come into our own when we embrace the freedom to be who God made us to be, without stereotypes or imposed roles based on somebody else's idea of who a woman ought to be or how she ought to look or what she ought to do. Because there are all kinds of ways to be a woman in this world, all kinds of ways to be a man. And perhaps most importantly, there are really way more than just those 2 options. That freedom to be who we are is for all of us. Look at the world around us. It is so hugely, marvelously diverse, and God calls it very good. God loves that diversity. Turns out it was true. What they said when I was little, more than they meant it, I expect. I can be anybody I want to be. I can be a big old butch dyke with jeans and flannel shirts and hopefully cowboy boots. Or I can wear lipstick and dresses. Actually, Janet says I can't do that, and she's probably right. But I can go out into this world as a man or a woman or whatever I feel like on any given day. We can be all sorts of wonderful things. We can do all sorts of wonderful things, and we will. And God will love us. So let's celebrate that. Happy Pride.